The workplace of passion and purpose. What do you think about it?
I think that is the competitive workplace of tomorrow, of yesterday. It hasn't really changed. The problem is we still live in a world where too many leaders lead with profit above all decisions.
Mm.
The sustainable, profitable company of the future will be one led by leaders who integrate ideology and strategy, not
Hmm.
toggling back and forth between profit this month, let's work on the culture. The two should never be separate.
And I think we will unpack a lot of those concepts today. But I know that you are this type of individual who is not only yourself, you're very passionate about what you do, but you're also somebody who help other people to be passionate about what they do or even to find their passion. And I think passion is a very tricky thing, right? Because we all want to work in the workplace where we actually utilize the full potential that we have. But easier said than done, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And even passion means different things to different
Hmm.
people. For some people, passion means what I love to do. For other people, passion could mean a calling, something that's so important you can't ignore it. It consumes your thoughts when you're not doing it.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty different definition. Personally, I love the definition of passion that it is a calling, it's something that's too important to ignore, and it's a cause bigger than yourself. What are you willing to sacrifice and keep doing, regardless of whether or not you're getting ahead early?
Hmm.
Especially a lot of entrepreneurs, it's too easy to switch gears if they're not making money right away.
Yeah.
Where if it's truly a passion, you'll go deep and you'll start to realize the benefit of incremental returns.
How did you find your passion?
I'm the prototypical, I guess, poster child for not a straight line type of
Mm.
career.
Yeah.
So my first passion was football, and I was super skinny. I got bullied a lot. So lifting weights for me started out as self defense,
Mm.
but through that, I found empowerment. And then football was this feeling of physically dominating another person in a way that is legal and fair and doesn't, it's not bullying. You just go at each other and one person's going to win. That was so empowering. And then when I got hurt, that led to my first career, which was personal training and fitness.
Hmm.
That still stemmed out of a passion. Bullying led to being passionate about football. Football ending led to being passionate about strength and conditioning and learning how the body works. And then selling in our second company, wondering what I wanted to do, along the way discovering entrepreneurship and coaching others towards their potential. Like every door that closes, a door that I enjoyed more opened. So it's funny that for me, passion had a lot to do with challenges I've been through and lessons I learned through hardship.
Hmm.
And for that reason, communities that I wanted to serve because I'd walked a mile in their shoes.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And when you think about all the people that you inspire today to find their passions, I think your personal story plays a really important role when you're having those conversations. And I've seen it so firsthand with the students when you have conversations here at the college, but also with other people that you mentor outside of your, formal type of job, including myself. So I am very grateful to you, Stan, for helping me to find my passion and to grow it and to actually ask the right questions when I didn't know which questions to ask myself. So,
I
um,
appreciate that. It means a lot. You're going to go on and help, and you already have helped a lot of people. So that's what's so rewarding about
mhm.
coaching or mentoring others is you help people who help people. Your impact cascades, and we all have something to give.
Yeah,
I'm not done growing. I'm not done learning. I'm not done figuring a lot out about myself and business, but that doesn't mean there's not a lot of people I can help along the way. You're no different.
hmm.
You're not at the end of your journey. You're in your journey, but there's still a lot of people you can help with the wisdom you've acquired. And anyone listening to this, it's the same. We go through challenges, we learn. There's other people you can help while you're figuring it out. Don't wait
Yeah.
until you get there to think it's time to start giving back.
Because I think you never get there.
No
Like,
one,
it's not the destination. You will never get there. It's the journey, right?
100%.
As cliche as it sounds, but that's what we enjoy the most.
It's so true. And I read a book recently and did a course through Positive Intelligence. And
Mm,
the author, course creator, Shirzad, he talked about high achievers, which is my biggest saboteur. If anyone's taken that assessment, high achiever is the biggest thing. Like I crush a goal, the next thing. I'm never stopping to smell the roses. But what hit me like a ton of bricks is that you're only achieving a goal less than 5% of your life,
mhm.
way less. Most of it is the journey. So if
Yeah,
you don't find a way to enjoy the journey, you're going to be unhappy most of the time. That's not a recipe that I want to sign up for.
that's so true. That's so true. And then if we bring it into the workplace, let's try to kind of split it into two parts. So building the workplace of passion and purpose, I think it's the responsibility of both people who actually build the workplace in terms of, managers, presidents, CEO, owners, whoever starts the company, but also people who come on board and start working for this particular organization. It's also on them to build the workplace of passion and purpose for themselves.
I totally agree. It has to start at the top.
Mhm.
Again, might sound cliche, but I look at my mentor who created an amazing business that thousands of people worked at, and tens of thousands of people had life changing experiences in this business. And while so many people would attribute the thanks or the success to the founders,
Mhm.
speak to either of them, and they'll talk about how so many people contributed to the culture over the years. So, yes, the founders have to set the vision. They have to have a vision that's bigger than themselves that other people can relate to and get behind. Because if you're in a private business, profitability does not motivate the troops.
Yeah.
Even if you have profit sharing,
Yeah.
ultimately, impact does.
Mhm.
What the organization stands for, besides making money, and that is purpose. So when we create a business, it's important to think what's going to mobilize others, not just motivate me. And over time, if those leaders are not threatened by talent, if they don't have founderitis, they will invite other people to contribute to the collective vision by having their ideas challenged, by inviting new great ideas. And over time, the thing that gets created that impacts thousands of lives probably doesn't look that similar to
Mhm.
the thing that was created at that person's kitchen table or in their garage or wherever founders started.
You started talking about leadership, and I wanted to ask you about one of the wonderful books that you have written, Fixing Leadership. Incredible book. It's such
Thank
an
you.
interesting read, and I think that more people should know about it. So, could you tell a little bit more about the story behind the book? Why did you start it? Why fixing leadership? What is there to fix about the leadership? And can we fix it?
Well, any large problem takes a village. It's a systemic problem. It means a lot of people have to get involved. And that was one of the primary drivers of writing the book.
Mhm.
Not that I think I have all the answers to fix leadership, but that we can't keep quiet about the problems. And so, what are the problems?
Mhm.
First of all, we don't have enough capable leaders who live to serve more than one bottom line. When I was pivoting in my career, I did a program at Royal Roads, and I met another of my mentors, a professor of leadership studies, Dr. Marilyn Taylor, who, through her research, came to the conclusion that less than 10% of the world's leaders could truly be considered values based.
Hmm.
That's not enough.
Yeah.
And how do we move the needle? We need leaders who intentionalize profit, developing our people, improving our communities, and not leaving our planet worse off. Because last time I checked, we only have one. So all companies will need to be sustainable companies already. Population is growing, resource consumption is growing at rates that aren't sustainable.
Mhm.
So we need conscientious, forward thinking businesses that live within a defined ecosystem. The other thing is, we don't know how to teach leadership in a way that actually moves the needle on leadership competence. We tend to treat leadership as a set of academic theories,
Mm.
read the book, take the course, regurgitate, go. In other words, we tend to try to encapsulate leadership
Yeah.
as a set of things that could be known. when real leadership is, what do you do when we don't know what to do? We need to be able to turn to people who've got soft skills, decision making. They have the ability to be decisive during uncertainty, create psychological safety, and commit people to a cause, among other things. But those are some of the critical elements
Mhm.
that underpin leadership effectiveness. Those are all situational. That's like, you're not going to give your 14-year-old a book and then 10, 20, 100 hours later give them car keys. You're going to want to teach concepts and then
Yes.
give them practice in a skill building environment that creates skill transference.
Do you think leadership is, as if we talk about it as a skill, is it something born or learned? Do
Both.
people both?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. There are certain people that are born naturally great communicators. There are people that are great visionaries. There are people that are very caring and empathetic,
Mhm.
great listeners. So all of those are different strengths that can make a great leader. So somebody could have a naturally occurring strength that predisposes them to success in leadership, just like they're going to have gaps. They might not be good at delivering feedback. They might be so driven they're a little bit impatient.
Mhm.
All of us have natural gifts and natural gaps. So all leaders have strengths we can rely on that can help us succeed. And we have things that will hold us back if we don't work on ourselves, which requires, of course, self awareness, intention, and getting the reps in. So I think it's both, no matter how capable or naturally talented the leader is.
And you're so right, because you might have a potential to be a good leader, but if you do not develop this potential, simply having a potential is not enough. And also, if let's say you naturally don't feel like you can be a good leader, but you have certain qualities, by mastering those qualities, by working on those qualities, like in the gym, right? It takes time to build the muscle. So it might help you to build this leadership muscle to become a good leader.
And it's such a good analogy because just like going to the gym, there's different kinds of athletes.
Hmm.
An athlete is not the biggest, strongest person. It might be the fastest. It might be the
Yeah.
person with the greatest endurance. Just like there's different types of athletes, there's different types of leaders. So you might have a leader that is your picture, your model of leadership, and they might be that stereotypical charismatic person at the front of the room.
Yeah.
The research is clear. A lot of times introverts make better leaders.
Hmm.
So if we can do away with a preconceived, often Hollywood fueled notion of what great leadership looks like,
Hmm.
then we can set ourselves up for success, because what makes you a good leader would be different than what makes me a good leader. And neither is better or worse,
Yeah.
as long as we can lean into what we can bring to the table that can develop our team and help the organization win.
I really love it, because very often we, as human beings, we are trying to simplify definitions or approaches to leadership, and then we are trying to find, okay, what is one formula that now everybody has to follow, and that's what you need to have in order to be a good leader. As you said, like an athlete in the gym, it could be somebody who is faster, it could be somebody who has more muscles and stronger, but you cannot really compare. It's different approaches, different types for different situations. Same with the leadership, I guess. Different types of organizations, different types of cultures might require different type of leadership, or even me as a person within me as a leader, let's say, I might require wearing a little bit different hats to lead in different situations.
Well, and this is where the whole, I think it's a Jim Collinsism about the right person in the right seat on the right bus.
Hmm. Yeah.
Because using that fitness analogy, if someone could be a champion ultra marathoner, they're a world class athlete, but chances are they would fail miserably if you tried to make that person an offensive lineman for a football team,
Hmm.
where they're having to block someone who's 300 pounds.
Yeah.
And that 300-pound freakishly strong athlete might not be able to run a marathon tomorrow. There's such different forms, and it
Yeah.
requires different leadership styles and skills.
Totally. There are a lot of big, very well-known names that some people would say this is the best thing that happened to me working with this person, and others would say this is the worst thing that happened to me working with this person. So it's as we said, there is no one particular path or formula that says that's a good leader, that's a bad leader. It's much more complicated than that.
It always is. And I think fit is important. Just like we said, self-awareness is important for
Yeah.
leaders. What are my skills? What are my gaps? How can I lead this team? Self-awareness is important for employees too.
Yeah.
What do you want from the job beyond a paycheck? Are you looking for learning and personal growth? In which case you might want a leader who is willing to mentor you. Are you looking for the most competitive salary and you want, compensation trumps all? Maybe you have a leader that is almost absent, but gives you a ton of autonomy
Mhm.
and expects that you're going to come and just deliver.
Yeah.
Like so,
Yeah.
so what your goals are also are important for the employee to think about what you need from the leader.
Yeah.
And communicating that is important. Don't just defer to the leader saying, "Well, you didn't read my mind." Ask for what you want.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's so true. You also mentioned this idea now as we talk, and also in the book, the fact that we do need to raise the future generation of the new leaders because we are at this almost breaking point, right? And a lot of people are talking about it. There's a lot of articles about it that a lot of leaders who've been there, they are about to retire, but we don't necessarily have enough that we currently have to replace them. And then if you take into account also everything that is happening with AI, with technology, there are those new tendencies that a lot of entry-level jobs are getting replaced, so on and so forth. So if you do not start raising those leaders from the very bottom up, kind of, right, from the very basic up, how are you going to have good leaders in 5, 10, 15 years from now?
It's a responsibility of leaders to replace themselves.
Yeah.
So when we look at generational transfer, baby boomers to Gen Xers to millennials and then Gen Z, it's important to invest in the next generation,
Mhm.
or else we'll have massive business continuity issues where all the intellectual property and experience leaves
Gone.
because it's between Bob's or Janet's ears,
Yeah.
and the next generation hasn't been mentored. Conversely, in the private sector, there's over $1 trillion in wealth concentrated inside of businesses that is going to need to transfer to the next generation.
Mhm.
How are we preparing those leaders to run businesses? We are going to see the system collapse if we don't invest in skill building and strategy, tactical
Yeah.
skills and people skills for the next generation.
And I cannot agree more. And my HR brain turns in because this is where I think about, okay, how do we make it practical? So we talk a lot about, or hear those big words, raise future generation of the leaders. You need to help people to succeed. But then if we translate it into the workplace practices, what does it actually mean? And then it makes me think about how important succession planning is within the organization, how important performance evaluation processes are, how actually important it is. I understand that it doesn't work in 100% of the times, but hiring people with potential and proper attitude and not necessarily with the current skill that the company needs. It's neither good or bad, right or wrong, but this is what actually we need to take into consideration, because if we start working on succession planning when all the leaders that we currently have already left, well, how we can possibly work on the succession planning if all this intellectual property is gone? So
Couldn't agree more. I mean, what's the root word of succession? Success.
Yeah.
There is no long-term success without building future leaders.
Totally. Absolutely. Which brings me to the next wonderful book that you have. And, this is the one that I am also a big fan of, The Life Literacy. I think, as you have mentioned in the book, that this is a book for either somebody who just starts their career, or people who are already running business, people who are transitioning, people who are leading and managing all these newcomers into the workplace. It's such a great read. It's so relatable, and I can see, we use it with a lot of students, I can see how they can relate. So can you tell us a little bit more about the book, what happened behind the scenes for this book, why the idea of life literacy, and what types of literacies this book has to offer.
Yeah, happy to, and thank you for doing our marketing for us.
Of course.
So my co-authors, Matt Young and Nelson So, and myself, all had unique experiences. And just through conversation, we realized that we needed to write this.
Mm-hmm.
Matt and I had similar experiences in the sense that being in a leadership position for a couple decades, we saw a big shift in the fundamental values that were present in the team.
Mm.
We still had a lot of old school work ethic, still had a lot of people that were aligned with the organizational values,
Mm-hmm.
but we saw a lot more people that didn't, people that were more self-focused versus team-focused, people that maybe the work ethic was not as, just not the same as what it was before.
Yeah.
People that were less focused on the customer, more focused on themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Made it very, very challenging in a customer facing business to A, do business, and B, to remain passionate and interested about doing it for the long term.
Yeah.
So Matt sold the company he founded. I was fortunate enough to go through an exit event in the company that I bought into that I didn't found. And it was a head scratcher of what I wanted to do next.
Mm-hmm.
Too young to feel that old, and didn't make enough money through the exit to retire.
Mm-hmm.
So it was more about leadership is not seeing a problem and ignoring it. Leaders take action. That was one thing we came to. Nelson had a different experience that he was a bit younger and was doing almost, no one does everything right, but Nelson was doing so many of the right things, more than I was at the same age and career stage. Working hard, learning, being a great team player, and was getting denied a lot of opportunities he should have had. Now, he's had an amazing career and it continues to impress me every day. However, we kind of got both perspectives from our group of co-authors. And therefore, I think that's why the book is relatable, because it's not a couple of older guys saying, do this next generation.
Yeah.
It's somebody saying, I did this, it didn't work. I had to change me. And when I changed myself, my perspective, my attitude, the world opened up. And people who could mentor me were more willing to do so.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of tried to break down a set of fundamental attitudes, behaviors, and strategies that people beginning their careers could employ so that they could actually get the shot they deserved. And we wanted to write it, Matt and I, to our own kind of generation and leaders that had been doing it for a while on why you need the next generation. 80% of the workforce now is millennials or younger.
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing? How do you run a company if you're not going to invest in the next generation? That's your competitive advantage.
Yeah.
So we wanted to write that book for both generations, and we're thrilled that it's been able to have an impact for, well, people 4 going on 5 years now.
Absolutely. And you know what really stood out to me, it's this little, from the book, it's this little concept that there are so many books that have been written on leadership, but there is not even one book that has been written on how to be a good employee. And I'm like, yes, this is such a good concept, such a basic thing to understand. But we often talk about how to be a great leader, how to lead organizations, how to create these workplaces of passion and purpose. But rarely do we talk about the idea of what's your responsibility as an individual to actually find and create for yourself this workplace of passion and purpose, how to find your purpose, how to find your passion, and how to fit into the right organization where you actually give and take, you do both.
Absolutely. There's no point in teaching another book on leadership unless we're teaching people how to show up in the first place.
Yeah.
We need more great employees than we do great leaders. There are more employees in the world than there are leaders, and there's a lot more skills we need to employ than just leadership. Companies have so many different moving parts. Great leaders know they have to hire people smarter than them at different disciplines. By definition, that means we need more employees than employers.
Yeah.
So that's what we have to build. We need to build a pipeline of coachable, employable, moldable employees as we build a pipeline of competent leaders.
Big time, big time. And when I combine these both books and both concepts, when we think about fixing leadership and we think about the life literacies, so what would you say is the biggest, let's do both, let's do the challenges and let's do the benefits that this new generation of employees bring into the workplace. So let's start with some of the challenges that they experience as they get into the workplace.
Some of the challenges are that people my age and maybe older, sometimes even younger, don't want to hire younger people. And it's because they paint them all with one brush. They say, I met a young person who was entitled, wasn't willing to work that hard, and thought they were special before they did anything. And they wanted 100 grand to start. So they think all young people are like that. That's not fair. That is a challenge that's not the fault of young people. It's not your fault that the person who interviewed for that job right before you was late for the interview, entitled, and had unrealistic expectations. But you're still going to be painted with that brush. By the way, the hidden opportunity there is stand out like a sore thumb compared to that last person. Be early, not on time. Be humble. Be prepared. Ask great questions. And look how you can contribute value to the organization instead of only focusing on what the organization can do for you. So there's an opportunity in the challenge. I think it's also the challenge is parents. Parents have done so much to try to remove adversity from their kids.
Yeah.
Bubble wrap them, tell them they're perfect and great no matter what they do. That's not true. There's a difference between I love you unconditionally and you're perfect just the way you are.
Yeah.
The second is not true. None of us are perfect. And when you tell your kids you're perfect just the way you are, you're actually telling them that they don't need to change anything. And if there's a disconnect, if there's a problem, it must be the other person. What we should be teaching our kids is that if there's a challenge, what's within your control to adapt, to change, to evolve your circumstances. The more resourceful and the more resilient that we can make our kids, that's great parenting. And it doesn't mean we love them less. It means we love them enough to have difficult conversations and not take the easy way out by just saying, no, it's the other person. It's not you, honey. That actually is bad parenting in the long run because you set your kids up for failure instead of, no, it's out of love. This is out of love. This is love, but you're avoiding the difficult conversations.
I cannot agree more. And I can even translate it from parenting into the educational institutions. Working with the students, working with younger people, or even older people who are students and they're transitioning in their careers to trying something new. It's those life skills that are so absolutely critical in anything that you do. The resilience, the ability to fail and learn from the failure, to understand, okay, what is in your control and what is not in your control. And then it brings this idea of, I'll try to make a connection. I know it does make connection in my head, but not necessarily if I say it out loud. One of the books that I absolutely love, I know you're a big fan too, is the Extreme Ownership.
Oh, Jocko Willink, yeah.
Gosh, it's an incredible book. And this idea of extreme ownership, when they talk about it, that yes, you own the wins and the mistakes of your team, and there is no bad teams, just bad leaders. If you don't dive deep into it, the idea could come across as, okay, if you want to be a good leader, you just take ownership for everything and protect your team from all the adversities. But that's the misconception. That's not what the book is talking about.
No, ownership is not the same as blame. Taking responsibility, taking accountability for where you are in life, for your role in any situation is different, because what that is it creates optionality.
Yeah.
If you don't take ownership, then often you are giving power to someone or something else. When you take ownership of where you are in life, when you take ownership of your present situation, then the next logical mindset shift is, what do I do now?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's so important, is to reframe accountability. It's not blame, it's doing what you said you were going to do, and holding people accountable to the promises they made.
Exactly.
High performers want accountability. People that aren't necessarily high performers, they're the ones that love to dodge accountability. They want the free pass.
Mm-hmm.
High performers don't want the free pass. They want you to follow up when you've done their job. They want you to follow up when they haven't done their job, and they're willing to own it and have a conversation about what you can do different next time.
Absolutely. And like in the workplace, it's not about what you say, it's about what you tolerate, right? So extreme ownership means taking ownership when you need to let a person go, taking ownership when you need to help person to grow or improve, and not necessarily blindly protecting from all the mistakes because you're the leader, you're always take responsibility for everything. That's it blindly. It's actually leading by
Yes.
example and letting others to see how you take ownership of your career and your success.
Taking ownership of hiring that person that you need to fire, taking ownership of what you could have done differently to lead them to a different outcome. And if there was
Yes,
nothing, taking ownership of the fact that maybe you could have had that termination conversation earlier. Because I always say it, the best way to lose A players is to keep C players around too long.
100%, 100%. And it's this idea of participation medals very often,
Yeah,
right? It's
yeah,
when we
exactly.
think about rewards and recognition in the workplace. Well, yeah, let's give medals to everybody just for being there. But then what does it do to your high performers? What
It,
does it do to your
it
athletes?
makes positive feedback meaningless.
Totally.
And if we want to give great feedback, we want to be able to give course correction feedback, those coaching
Yeah.
conversations, but also what people are doing well in a way that you notice it, not just good job, there you go.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And back to this concept of extreme ownership, I find it very freeing because it gives you control back.
Yeah.
Because when you own your achievements and your mistakes, it gives you control over the situation because now you're in control, you know what to do. And it's such a freeing concept. So, highly recommended book, by the way. But back to our conversation of workplace, of passion and purpose. What would you say would be your number one advice? And let's break it down a little bit to kind of different types of people who are building something. So let's start with entrepreneurs. What is the number one advice for them?
When we want to build a workplace of passion and perseverance and meaning, culture is not a box to check and it's not a project, it's an all the time thing.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're building a culture, culture is a big word that encompasses how things work around here. So while you're working on your strategy, your culture is happening with or without your involvement. So when it's an all the time thing, you are careful what you tolerate, what you won't tolerate. We always used to say your culture is either built by design or by default.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's built by default, often it becomes a disaster. Every organization has a culture. Not every organization has the culture that the leaders would intentionalize. So don't ignore it because it's happening with or without you. We prefer the latter, right? How long would you leave your toddler unattended or
Mm-hmm.
your new dog unattended?
Mm-hmm.
That's the same thing that's happening when you have 2, 3, 5, 600 employees and you're not putting guardrails or intention or standards around how you want everyone to coalesce.
And I absolutely agree with you. And in this idea of culture, it applies to not just entrepreneurs, it's any leader,
Absolutely.
any HR person within the company, any decision maker, any manager.
I start with entrepreneur because
Yeah.
you don't start thinking about culture when you bring on an HR director.
Yeah.
You don't start thinking about culture when you cross $1 million in revenue. You start at the start
Yeah.
because if you don't, it's way too hard to change it down the road.
Absolutely. Uh, then if we switch to the employee's perspective, somebody who is applying for a job in this particular organization and they want to work in the workplace of purpose and passion, what would you say number one advice for the job seekers or people who are trying to redefine themselves in the places of work?
It is to get in touch with their passion. If they don't know, follow their curiosity. If you do know, don't compromise. I always like to say to younger professionals, never trade your passion for a paycheck, especially early in your career, because it's really hard to get off that track. The golden handcuffs, right? You're making this much. It's hard to leave that job, even though you feel like you're dying at your desk one day at a time.
Yes.
I know a lot of people who are completely satisfied in large companies in very corporate jobs, but it's because their passion, their purpose is aligned with what the company's doing and their job there. They were intentional.
Yeah.
I know other people that are miserable I also know people that are founders that are miserable because they're too busy trying to find a way to make money, and they're not trying to way to combine their economic future with the mission, the passion, the purpose, the vision, like the change they're trying to have in the world. So founder, job seeker, employee, executive, it's very similar. It's know it yourself, know your values, know what you're about, know what you want to be a part of, and then get busy trying to find or create that.
Passion never lies.
No.